evening, everyone. My name is Isabella Toothman, and I'm an 8th grader here at Evergreen Community Charter School. I'd like to welcome you, the residents of Asheville, Haw Creek Community Association, Evergreen students, and citizens watching the live stream. We are here to participate in learning about our City Council primary candidates. The top 6 of these 8 candidates will move on to the general election, where Asheville citizens will choose 3 of the council seats. Tonight, we have 8th graders Poppy Bell, Brody Smith, Lucia Hess, and Gabriel Enos posing questions. This event is also supported by several more 7th and 8th grade Evergreen students. Please raise your hands for the audience to see you. So if you need anything during the event, feel free to find one of these volunteers. Audience members may suggest questions by writing them on the index cards provided. They will be screened for redundancy and time. You may bring your questions to the table by the door or give it to one of these students. We students are grateful that we have such a hands-on way to learn about how our government works and how to be an active citizen. In class, we learn about our Constitution and representative democracy, but seeing the process firsthand and being involved in putting important issues forward is invaluable. Now, let's give a formal welcome to our 2024 primary candidates. Kim Roney, Bo Hess, Todd Levin, Kevin Frazier, Charles Domingo, Sage Turner, India Pearson and Taylin Brene Breeden, who are candidates but are not able to be here tonight. Let's also just give them a round of applause. And thank you, candidates. Your willingness to attend shows that you are dedicated to serving citizens' best needs, which is often looked for in good candidates. We'd now like to turn it over to the candidates and offer them 2 minutes each to introduce themselves. This will be followed by questions from the audience and students here at Evergreen, to which candidates have 2 minutes to respond. At the end of tonight's forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Let's get started with Kim Roney.
Good evening. Friends and neighbors, I'm really glad to be here with you today, back at Evergreen Community Charter School and in the Haw Creek neighborhood. I am a music educator. This is my 25th year teaching music to young people. And so I know voters in this election that I've worked with since they were in kindergarten. A hopeful future for the next generation and their families is one of the reasons I'm running. But I come from a long history of educators. My great-great-aunt Faye lived here in the 20s and 30s. She worked with students that were deaf and blind. My great-great-grandparents were educators and health workers here in the late 1800s and early 1900s. My great-grandmother was born here in Kenilworth. But I moved here in 2006, and I have seen that our over-reliance on the tourism industry extracts our natural resources, displaces our vulnerable neighbors, and burdens our infrastructure. I've seen the priorities here because I've walked, biked, and used public transit in your neighborhood. I have walked here. It is incredibly hard to walk on this road. It's not accessible. A few years back, I was working with the 7th and 8th grade class at Evergreen to try to get a shelter at the transit stop. By the time that we had the presentation ready to go to council, we received news that the transit stop would be moved to make it easier to get the bus to run on time, which is why you lost the transit stop at the intersection here at Evergreen. So we have an opportunity to make things better, to shift the priorities so that we're taking better care of each other and our natural resources. If we do that, it will also be a great place to visit. Once again, my name is Kim Roney. I get to serve on your first and now second all-female council. I'm asking you to vote for me for re-election. More information at kimroneyforasheville.com.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. Good evening. Thank you all for coming out on this chilly evening. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you to the student activist team and Evergreen community. This is an awesome event, and I'm really proud to be here. My name is Bo Hess, and I am a candidate for Asheville City Council. I am a social worker, therapist, addiction specialist, law enforcement trainer, professor at Western Carolina University, and really what you should get from that is problem solver. Right now, Asheville needs representation that truly understands the aspirations and the challenges of all of the community. You know, I am running to make sure that we have integrated, healthy cities. I'm running to make sure that we're addressing holistically and humanely our crime and houselessness issue, that we're addressing head-on mental health and addiction, and that we're creating economic stability and security for all Asheville residents. My background as a social worker has equipped me to work really collaboratively with people of all walks of life to find common ground and work towards solutions that have positive impacts on their everyday lives. And that is exactly what I commit to doing for all of Asheville. Electbohess.com to learn more. Again, we would love to see you on the campaign trail. And remember, early voting is going on now, so you can vote. Thank you so much.
Hello. Okay, hey, I'm Todd Levin. I'm running for Asheville City Council. I am a father of 3 amazing daughters. My oldest one, who's 24, is actually a graduate from Evergreen School here, so it's been that long since I have been up here, but I remember coming up here, and I don't think much has really changed since then. I am a husband. My wife is not only my life partner, she's also my law partner, which is a great transition to I am a lawyer. I used to do a lot of land use law. I now do veterans benefit law. I am an Army veteran. I served from 1998 to 04, came back to Asheville in 04. Well, I first moved to Asheville in 1985, but then I came back to Asheville in 04 after serving in Iraq, and I went full-time to UNCA. And I worked at the Grove Park Inn. I bought my first house in 04 because you could actually buy a house on a waiter's salary in 2004, which is not the case now. I went to law school in Chapel Hill, and when I came back here, I started to do homeowners association law and property law, and that's really it. I run a free legal clinic for homeless veterans that I've done that for the past 10 years. I'm an adjunct professor at UNC School of Law. I teach a class in military and veterans law. My main focus is going to be core city services. I know it's not very exciting, but infrastructure, sidewalks are incredibly important, and I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that you guys are here asking us questions, and I'm going to pass it on to Sage. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for being here and spending your chilly Monday night with us. Thank you to Evergreen for hosting as well, and to all of you families and teachers and administrators who have made this school one of the best in the community. I say that from a place of love. I'm Sage Turner. I'm on City Council right now, and I'm running for re-election. We share something in common. I was an Evergreen family as well, and I can't believe it. I'm with you, Todd. The kids have grown. Our oldest is now 28, but she graduated from Evergreen. The youngest graduated in 2016. Is now a senior in college. This school and this room and this stage and this replaced roof, we all remember, has a big place in our heart and our family. And I'm just really thrilled to be here, and I'm thankful you guys are hosting this event here. My education background was in business management. I went on to study city planning and regional planning in grad school, and I love that work. I did it as an adult. It was like a later in life passion, and it has really spilled over into this work of being on city council really well. I'm just passionate about the work. I'm passionate about building strong communities. I'm passionate about understanding just human behavior and how we all interrelate and how we all make a stronger community together. My skills on council have been mostly around environmental issues and affordable housing. I chair our housing community board and the regional 4-county housing board, and that means that we track all of the city, state, and federal funding that comes in and deploy it to the projects and organizations that can go out and build that affordable housing. It's integral to the city. I know we have an ongoing housing problem. That is my primary focus. Along with Todd on core services, we are behind on infrastructure, we are behind on maintenance, and my fear is that this city will continue to grow and sprawl and spend more money on more infrastructure when we cannot maintain the infrastructure we have. So housing is a passion for me. And thank you everybody for being here. To find more information about me, I put a lot of information on my website. That's sageforasheville.com. I'm updating it constantly. You can ask me questions and get feedback there as well. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Charles C.J. Domingo. I usually go by C.J., so feel free to call me C.J. Unlike Sage and Todd, I can't say that I came from Evergreen, but I did come from Francine. I graduated from Francine Delaney New School for Children, part of one of their first graduating classes over there. And I have to say that compared to where we all started, because I saw y'all when you were brand new, you guys certainly have come a long way. So I grew up here, born here, and so my background is I went to Francine Delaney, I went to Asheville High School, I ultimately graduated from North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics, went to UNCA, got a degree in biology. My first thing that I got to do right as I was walking out of school was to do some studies on riparian trees up in Pisgah National Forest, try to help them figure out why the soil was changing and allowing these beetles to start immigrating and eating a tree that normally they couldn't eat. Unfortunately, 2008 wiped out our grant, and so I ended up working other jobs. Ended up discovering that I love working with people, working in frontline jobs, frontline roles, serving customers, and that's where I've been mostly working since then, doing leadership stuff. I've worked in restaurants, I worked in a grocery store, managed that for about 9 years. During COVID, I worked with Sona Pharmacy, so I spent a lot of time going up and down your road, so I know firsthand just how awful your roads can be for folks driving, just trying to walk around, trying to figure out where folks are at. Seems like there's people plopping down new structures all the time and not really putting a lot of thought and care into it. I also worked for the city, for their parking services division for a while, and so I have a first-hand experience how bad that infrastructure has gotten. And I know that many of the folks there are so disheartened because just like a recent report that was presented to the council members said, many of the folks on those committees feel that they're not being heard. So for me, my big watchword is just listening to the community, listening to the people in the front line, trying to make sure that we're reaching out to them. If you'd like to know more about my platform, I've got my big billboard in the back because I saw everybody was taking my business card, taking a picture of it and chucking it in the garbage. So I have that there, but in case you don't see it, cj4avl.com. Thank you so much.
Good evening, neighbors. My name's Kevin Frazier. I'm excited to be running for Asheville City Council. To our students, thank you for being rock stars tonight and putting this together. And to all the teachers and administrators here at Evergreen hosting us tonight, thank you for being heroes and doing the hard work that helps us build community. I'm a native of Asheville. I've always called it home except when I went off to school. The Asheville I grew up in was a very different Asheville than today. Much of downtown was abandoned and boarded up, a few unsavory businesses, a couple of bankers, a couple of lawyers, and a lot of empty streets. It's been a dramatic transformation over the past 40 years, thanks to collaborative leadership, to great leaders who stepped up time and time again to make Asheville what it is today. I am an educator by profession myself. I currently serve as the executive director of Western Carolina University's programs in Asheville, down our satellite campus in Biltmore Park. I taught history at UNC Asheville, both the history of cities and history of planning, and also pre-colonial African history as well. I also own Well Played Board Game Cafe downtown, so I'm a small business owner and have that experience and live downtown as well. My concern and part of what's driving me to run for city council is I feel that we're struggling as a city to get past COVID and get past a reactionary sensibility, and that we want to move forward. We want to have a vision and move with intention, that we know where we're going, because my fear is if we don't move with intention, we're going to leave our neighbors behind. And we want everybody to come on this journey with us. I want an Asheville where everybody feels welcome, where they are safe and they feel they belong. I want an Asheville where everybody feels heard. We are stewards of a great city. Together, let's build our vision and let's build our Asheville. Thanks for having us.
Now we will begin with our questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, then the following candidate will respond. For this question, we will begin with Bo. Many citizens are here today with concerns surrounding the development plan for Meadows at Haw Creek subdivision. It will increase traffic drastically, as the plan is for nearly 95 new houses. The newsletter from Haw Creek Community Association reads, "This development would transform the bucolic pasture and hardwood forest into high-density housing that exceeds current zoning standards." My question for the candidates is, if you were to be voted into a council person position, would you be siding with big developers like Kevin Jackson, or are you willing to gain a seat to support and protect the interest of the current citizens and lands of Asheville as a whole?
And thank you for that easy question. No, this is the kind of questions that we need from our leaders that are running to represent us. And it's important that all of you guys know who your candidates are and where they stand on the issues. And I'm very clear. I'm with the community when it comes to these big developments. I'm listening to your concerns, I'm meeting with you, I'm hearing what your concerns are about this situation. And there are a lot of them, from water pressure to traffic to higher density housing per plot, to the loss of tree canopy, and to the loss of just an integrated neighborhood with the rest of Haw Creek. And that is a concern for me too. And you can rest assured that I will make sure that I'm looking at every decision. I'm analyzing the pros and the cons of those decisions, and I am not a representative of big developers. I'm a representative of the people of Haw Creek, a representative of the people of our community, and that's who I need to hear from so I understand what you need so I can vote accordingly. So, to summarize, no, I will not stand with the big developers. We need to move in a sustainable fashion where we can have stakeholders that are involved, that we need big developers who will compromise with the community that they're developing in. And we need to work towards, again, using the existing infrastructure that we have, as well as moving towards building new sustainable infrastructure. Thank you.
That is a great question. I am going to say that I don't think it is either you side with the developer or you side with the community. I want to go off of the Haw Creek Community Association frequently asked questions, which I think are brilliant, and I think they're done incredibly well. And one of the things that I want to cite is that this is a direct quote: "Without a CZ review or conditional zoning review, the second buyer," as in the context, if City Council did not grant the conditional zoning, but it said, "Without a CZ review, the second buyer would not be required to consult with the community, protect the existing tree canopy, or provide a conservation easement." So I think the issue is, if you don't have a need for conditional zoning, then the problem is there's nothing really that you can hold a developer to. 49 homes can be developed. Thank you. So I think it's a balance. If you want your community input, and if you want to be listened to, part of that is going with a need for the conditional zoning. Thank you. Thank you.
Really came out with the hard ones right away. I'm currently on City Council, so this will be coming to me for a vote. I will be very frank with you, okay? So I'm not going to weigh in directly because there is a hearing coming to us at which we will hear both sides and make a decision then. What I will tell you is how I tend to treat these types of things that are not this specific project. I tend to work with both sides because this community desperately needs housing. We hear it left and right. We hear it in every study. We know that we need more housing. And every time it shows up, we also say, not here, it's too much, there's too much traffic. The answer is somewhere in between. It has to be in between. So my skill set, my other job is in construction and project management. So I understand construction. I can look at designs, I can see where things can be improved. I can look at roadways and interiors and egresses and work with people on what can be a better solution. I am going to be the type that sits down at that table and says, this is what I'm hearing from the community. 95 is too many. What else can you do? I'm going to be the type that says, you're taking out too many trees, you made it past the tree canopy protection ordinance, but what else can you do? And I'm going to try and get something over the finish line that works for all parties. That's how I've been doing it. We do need the housing, and you're welcome to contact me for more information. I know this is a very sensitive topic in the community right now.
Yeah, so as Sage and as Todd have said, we do have to try to strike a balance. We don't want NIMBYism to prevent us from being able to add necessary homes to a community that is struggling from a lack of affordable housing. However, as Todd had also raised, it's important that we make sure that we are holding developers to account in the places that we can to find solutions that do work. Given that it will take them a considerable amount of time to produce the homes, I do hope that there would be a path in which the city could find a solution that is a good fit for this community without destroying the flora and fauna that define your home, and without destroying the sense of, as was called out in the question, the bucolic pastures. I think that there is a way that we could try to find those things. However, I do think it requires the city to also stand up and say, all right, this community already is strained. What are we doing to make sure that the buses are running where they need to run, make sure that there are walkable spaces where there need to be walkable spaces? If they need to take drastic steps in this area, then it's been too long. We need to get to those and find a solution that works for everybody. Thank you.
If I was sitting on city council, my approach to this would be to first ask, is it helping us with our challenges on affordable housing? Does it meet any of those goals? And then the second is, it's a conditional zoning request, and so that's an exception. For me, exceptions need to be exceptional. What's it contributing to the community and to the neighborhood to do an exception? What's it contributing to the city? And if I'm looking at a project and it's not meeting those goals, it's not meeting our objectives for affordable housing, if it's not providing for the community that it's in, if it's not being exceptional, asking for an exception, then I'll be looking for something else.
Thank you so much. Check, 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 check. Is the mic on? Check, check, check.
Hi, I'm going to wait till we have sound because it's really important that everyone can hear. Climate and neighborhood resiliency continues to be a top priority for me. What does that mean? It means that I'm always going to prioritize people and planet over profit. You've seen my record on council. I know how to say no, but I want to say yes to the things that our community needs. So, the job of council is to take the decisions in front of us, budget, plans, policy, land use, that's an important one, right? To have these decisions align in a path to get us to the aspirational goals in our Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan. Every single conditional zoning names the comp plan as the reason that we're making the vote. My questions when I'm looking at whether or not something is appropriate land use. Does the above and below ground infrastructure support density? We need housing density on transit corridors because cars should not be a prerequisite to getting access to jobs and groceries. But can the stormwater handle it? Will our tree canopies support it? And I'm out of time. More info at kimroneyforasheville.com.
For this question, we will begin with Todd. To piggyback off the previous question, in 2016, there is money set aside by the city to extend the sidewalk from Beverly to Bell Road. The construction was supposed to begin over a year ago. We have seen no sidewalk built. Residents of this area, families with kids at Evergreen and Haw Creek Elementary, and business owners in this area have been given a promise that is yet to be delivered. 1. Can we expect for this sidewalk to be actually built? 2. If council people make promises concerning the new housing development, what incentive do we have to trust it will happen?
Thank you very much. Okay, yes, infrastructure. I agree with Councilwoman Roney that multimodal is very important. That includes walking. I mean, we need sidewalks. There is no reason why we should have such a large amount of streets that need to be paved or fixed, sidewalks that need to be built. I mean, yes, Yes, I think we absolutely need sidewalks. We should heavily invest in our infrastructure. And I think before we continue on to go to the next big and shiny thing, we need to make sure that we're maintaining and taking care and properly funding the stuff that we have right now and fulfilling our promises. So that was actually a significantly easier question than Bo got last time. So thank you. Yes, sidewalks.
Do y'all want us to stand up every time? Is that better? I'm not aware of this sidewalk deficiency that we seem to have, and I'm going to contact staff about it tomorrow. And in the future, if anything ever comes up that you thought you were expecting to see but didn't, that is the first thing you can do. You can email us on council, call us, and we will get answers for you. You know, infrastructure is absolutely behind. The history of how we got here is quite fascinating. It dates back to the Great Depression. The city, as it has grown and evolved, did not take on its normal debt and infrastructure investments as other cities did. And so we've kind of put ourselves in this situation. And so now it is our responsibility as everything falls apart, whether it's a neighborhood pool, a sidewalk out front, whatever it is, water lines, it is our responsibility to get on top of that. And you'll be hearing more about this as the year progresses, and all of us candidates are asked to weigh in on potential infrastructure and facilities bonds. It's a big question, and we are behind. And I don't think anybody could stand up here and say otherwise, because we have a lot of issues. And I will follow up with you about this particular sidewalk.
Yeah, I really, that gets the heart of why I felt it was necessary for me to run this year for your city council, is because fundamentally this question is about trust and about follow through. And I want to return to a time when the government is boring. You don't have to check up because they tell you they're going to build a sidewalk. The sidewalk shows up when it's supposed to show up. It gets built on time, hopefully on budget. As much as possible, I want to make sure that if you choose me to be your city council person, that you never have to wonder about questions like this, because we will constantly be having these sorts of dialogues. Because again, to hit back to what I'd said at the beginning, I frequently, when I was working for the city, found people who were disheartened, that had given up on finding answers, because so often projects that are supposed to be funded and go off on time aren't. So yes, absolutely, if I'm on your council, we will get that sidewalk. And you can count on it. You will not have to wonder about why does it take years, why is it late, and if there is a very good reason, we'll get to you. You'll know. Thank you.
So I reached out to city leadership today to find out the status of the sidewalk project. The money has been encumbered, so it doesn't get lost because it was tied to the bond referendum, and property acquisitions are soon to begin. The challenge in all that is we didn't know that. And the communication part has clearly not been the strong suit. You all have a great tool in your communications newsletter and a way that you're communicating as a neighborhood. I don't think you should have to go knocking on the door at city council, at city offices all the time to find out the status. We've got to have a process by which the neighborhoods affected get an update. It also sounds like there's some huge inflationary issues on building the sidewalk. Y'all are smart folks, you get that, but you need to have that information. So let's get the sidewalk built.
As an advocate for open meetings policy, I know that improving communications and transparency is really important, of a minimum expectation of our government. And there is deferred maintenance. And I want to let you know, in case you didn't already know, that the bond program that the sidewalks were included in has a transparency dashboard. And so you can see the timeline of where land acquisitions are happening. Go to City of Asheville or ashevillec.gov and check out the bond dashboard. But I wanted to point out that I'm on the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, that oversees the budget plans and policies for our state-maintained roads. I voted to prioritize complete streets for our local corridors, and instead the MPO, with all these cost overages, sunk that fund into the smallest part of the I-26 connector that's displacing vulnerable neighborhoods. So now Sand Hill Road, Louisiana, Sweeten Creek, and other local corridors will not receive funding for 30 years. We prioritize the tourism and the profit more than the people who live and work here. I'm not running because things are going great. I'm running because they can be better. Thank you.
So as I door knock in Haw Creek this is a common theme that gets discussed. They say, Bo, we've been waiting for this sidewalk for years and years. The city wants us to vote on another bond, and there's no way that we're doing it until we get what we have already paid for and already voted on. And if I'm in council, I will make sure that the city is hustling, that we are making sure that we're taking care of our taxpayers instead of the big developers and hoteliers that come into our region. And coincidentally enough, when we take care of things like sidewalks, our roads, we fix the potholes. All of us here know a road that we drove on the way here that has a pothole in it and has probably had that pothole in it for years, right? We must take care of our city infrastructure and our maintenance. So my first goal is to prioritize the repair and enhancement of our physical infrastructure, focusing on our roads, bridges, parking lots, buildings, and secondly, fortifying our critical infrastructure and making sure that something like last December never happens again where a part of our city does not have water. Thank you so much.
Now for this question, we will begin with Sage. There is a growing sense of financial desperation as house prices rapidly increase and people who have lived here for years can no longer afford to reside. We could also add that Asheville's unhoused population continues to grow, over a 21% increase since 2021. How do you plan to navigate the current issue? And what is your approach to preventing these issues from growing? How do you plan on addressing this situation in ways that meet the needs of those without housing and the needs of the community at large?
So I believe this to be our biggest problem. And I say that because it is connected to every other problem. Over half of the folks that live in Asheville cannot afford where they live. That is a fact. And because of that, it spills into every other aspect of their life and every other choice that they make for their families. It is a growing problem. We have made great strides in recent years. We are doing more than ever to improve the situation. We have done affordable housing bonds. We have enacted new policies. We are doing the plans. We are making strides. We have completed like 1,000 units in the last few years, but there are several thousand needed behind them. So we are behind. We're going to be looking at more affordable housing bonds. The answer is not what you've been seeing, which is these mega big apartment complexes and then one single family house that's $600,000, $700,000. The answer is somewhere in the middle. You may have heard about something we're doing right now called a missing middle study. This is the backyard cottages, the duplexes, the triplexes in different areas. It's infill solutions that are sized appropriately, kind of like you're having a conversation down the street. If we don't diversify our housing types, we are committing ourselves to this problem perpetuating.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those things that time and again we keep getting asked about is people are feeling the hurt, they're feeling the strain. And as Sage did just mention, the missing middle study has demonstrated that there is a deficiency of what used to exist in Asheville of these interim houses between denser apartments and freestanding single-family homes. I would like to see about putting together a program that would encourage people to be able to put accessory dwelling units on existing property. So instead of pumping 95 homes into an overstressed community, we could let different communities that can handle extra growth spread it organically, naturally, all throughout Asheville, and that would also help with the financial strain a little bit by letting those folks who do own their land get an extra source of income. I think that we need to have a more long-standing view of our problems so that way we can be finding ways to grow our economy sustainably so folks can have careers to continue to step up as people before us did without just being stuck in dead-end solution to dead-end solution that only solves what's happening right now and not looking to the future. Thank you.
I appreciate the fact you put the question together with unhoused and affordable housing. Those are very intimately linked. We have to start with the affordable housing because we've got to have a place for folks to lay their heads. For us, it's first and foremost an inventory issue. We don't have enough housing. But the other part is it is a policy issue. I get concerned that we at times feel like we're reinventing the wheel. Cities have addressed this for many years, and we don't have to act like we're the first to face it. We have good relationships and can learn from other communities. We need to codify this too in how we're going to address affordable housing, like the missing middle components. We can actually mess that up policy-wise if we don't do that completely. And part of this, it's time to look at the Unified Development Ordinance. It is time for it to have a major rewrite and review. Thanks.
So the visible deepening of poverty is absolutely heartbreaking. I have a student whose brother camps outside because his landlord said if he slept on the sofa in the living room, the whole family would be evicted. So this is personal and connected to me. The city is responsible for the safety of everyone in our community, regardless of their income status and their housing status. And if we get serious about how we relate to our neighbors experiencing homelessness and poverty, it will improve the quality of life for all of us. Reducing homelessness means mitigating crises effectively, removing barriers to shelter, getting and keeping people housed, centering people with lived experience. As your council member, I voted to fund deeply affordable and permanently supportive housing, supported expansion of Code Purple, and rejected policies that criminalize poverty and the food sharing ban. As liaison to the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, I'm committed to the National Alliance to Homelessness reduction of 50% in homelessness strategies. You can share in that work. Check out Continuum of Care, ashevillec.gov.
As someone deeply involved with the houseless community, working at the large psychiatric hospital here in Asheville, volunteering at ABCCM for years, now being their clinical supervisor at ABCCM, I understand the critical need for targeted support across the spectrum, from people who have already lost their home to people who are at risk of losing their home. Asheville has a housing challenge. And number one, we need to increase our housing stock across the spectrum. That means from transitional shelters to multi-bedroom houses, artists, live workspaces. We need apartments, duplexes, but again, growth in a sustainable manner. Having a 125 room or place apartment is not sustainable, but we can start with building a duplex in a neighborhood, and getting 4 apartments in a duplex looks like a house, and there's little traffic issues. But we must work to provide pragmatic solutions, and that is what I will do and work on as your council member. Thank you.
I could not agree more. We have to build. We have to build a significant amount of affordable housing, but we can't forget that we need to have the logistical support and the infrastructure to support that housing. But we do need to build. The gateway to becoming unhoused is affordable housing. The lack of affordable housing is causing our housing crisis, our crisis of the unhoused, and we need to build, but we also need to make sure that we have the logistical support and the infrastructure to sustain the increase in building. Thank you very much.
For this question, we will begin with CJ Domingo. The Community Reparations Committee was created in 2022 to make short, medium, and long-term recommendations that will make significant progress toward repairing the damage caused by public and private systemic racism. For those that would be newly joining the Commission, how do you see your role in working with the Reparations Commission to support equity? If you have been serving on the Commission, what progress and acknowledgments have been made during your time served?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so this is at the heart of a lot of what we've been talking about is economic opportunity, chance for folks to have access to housing, to jobs, and trying to heal a system that for decades, or actually for over a century, I mean, it's America's original sin here, is trying to undo the damage that had been done through terrible policies that's selected against people on the basis of race. For me, it's just about trying to find what is our measure of success, and in this case, folks finding jobs that work for them, houses that work for them, giving them the opportunity to live the lives that they deserve to be able to live, to be able to thrive, and making sure that we're hitting those goals. As long as we are getting to those results and we are finding sound, sensible ways to effectively use public time, public resources to get to those objectives, then that's how I would measure success for the Reparations Commission.
I am so proud to be in a city that actually had the guts to even talk about this issue. We're not talking 40 acres and a mule. 40 acres and a mule doesn't solve the issues, right? I'm proud that we've gone together as a community. We have the Reparations Commission. They've not finished their work. There's been some question about the timing. I got to be honest. We didn't get to the state in the course of a few months. This is centuries. The commission needs to be given time to do its work. And then the work of City Council is to carefully review and figure out how it can support those immediate, midterm, and long-term goals. This is important work. If we work and heal part of our community, we heal all of our community.
Thank you so much for asking this question. The Community Reparations Commission meeting is happening right now in the Civic Center. And I'm usually at those meetings, but I'm here today, and so I'm gonna watch the stream of that very important conversation happening tonight. So one of the things I heard about is what does it look like to acknowledge? I believe that reparations are necessary and possible. Right now, the impact focus areas are around education, economic development, healthcare, housing, and criminal justice. I, as a member of Asheville's first all-female council, was one of the people on the Boards and Commissions Committee that interviewed the applicants for the Community Reparations Commission. We seated them. We've supported them with tax dollars. I helped to identify $1.2 million from the sale of White Lab by using the most restricted funds for housing to buy the Talbert lot. We put that into reparations funding instead. We have a long way to go. The question is, will the city and the county continue to support the Reparations Commission beyond the summer? We should. We wouldn't disband multimodal. We wouldn't disband the homelessness committee. We wouldn't disband the tree canopy. We shouldn't disband the Reparations Commission.
Yes, very important work indeed, the Reparations Commission. And as a social worker, we know and we are trained that there is no justice unless there is economic justice. That is what feeds us. That's what sustains us. That is what creates communities, regardless of what the commission says. Though, on day one, I am ready to get started on council to begin moving towards equity. What does that look like? It means safe communities and streets. A recent Asheville Citizen Times report noted that the majority of crime isn't actually in downtown. It is in our isolated, racially segregated areas, and we must address this. When I knock on those doors in Hillcrest, when I knock on the doors out in West Asheville in Deaverview community, they don't want less police. They want more police. They want safe streets. We can begin an entrepreneurial fund, a scholarship fund for college or trade school. We can support BIPOC businesses and make sure that they're supported by the city. We can create the Asheville we all deserve. Thank you.
I think the best thing that Asheville City Council can do for the Reparations Commission is not to micromanage the Reparations Commission. I think City Council has plenty on its plate. And I think the best thing to do is to get out of their way and actually let them do their job. I think it's that simple. Thank you.
I'll try and round us out with some things that have been happening recently. I too appreciate the Reparations Commissions and its position in the community. I feel that my personal role at this time is to sit back and listen and react to the needs and requests as I can as a council member. So that's happened in a myriad of ways. It happened first when we interviewed neighborhood leaders. So we had to decide who might hold these seats on this commission, and we decided it should be folks put forth from various neighborhoods. There was a request early on for a Stop the Harm audit, which we did in place. We've funded and put in place and completed. And there have been asks for more time There have been asks for more information. There have been asks for more funding. There have been just step by step things as they go. I think they're going to take more time to get to the solutions that we're really talking about, especially with the IFAs, but it's going to be incremental. I think it was Kevin that said it best. It took us a long time to get here. It was our missteps, and it's going to take us a long time to solve this. I believe that housing will be a true part of it, and I believe education is going to come to the surface in a big way as well. And perhaps some of the things we're working on in the community right now around funding around peak will be steps in those right directions as well.
For this question, we will begin with Kevin. Do you support funding public charter schools if they are making a positive impact academically and socially within our schools and communities, areas in which other public school systems have struggled with for decades, namely closing the achievement gap?
I think that it's always been schools that are the foundation of who we are as a culture. How we teach our children and the support we give. You know, right now we have a model of 2 different frameworks of public schools, and for the most part, those 2 models are working. I am not going to give up on public schools. I'm deeply concerned that we've got folks in state government willing to give up on public schools, and I'm not. So whether we're doing that at the charter school or we're doing it across the street at Haw Creek, I think we've got the opportunities to do the good work to make sure that we've got smart kids and that we have smart citizens so that we can continue to work and advance our society. Thanks.
So one of the things, following up on the conversation about reparations before, that's going to be a key set of recommendations is education. And because we have one of the worst, I think you said achievement gap, I've also heard it called opportunity gap in our schools, there has been a request from Peak Academy to help us meet the deep need in our community. That work was elevated by my colleague, Councilwoman Mosley. I support that request. We better see it on our next council agenda. And I also wanted to point out that I work really closely as a member of the NCAE, the NC Association of Educators, with our Asheville City and Buncombe County Association of Educators. I know that you know living wages based on the cost of housing is so important to retaining and recruiting the best staff. So I hope that we can all work together to make sure that living wages are priority for our city and county staff.
We need to make sure all of our schools are funded. We need to make sure that whether, like Kevin said, they are, Haw Creek Elementary or Charter or Peak Academy, that we are supporting those who are showing up for our children. When we show up for our children, we show up for our future. And so we must be investing in our schools. We must be making sure that they have safe schools to be in. We must make sure that they have access to school counselors and mental health in the schools. And we make sure that they have a curriculum that isn't afraid of real history and can honor the facts so that we don't repeat them. Thank you.
So as I said before, my oldest daughter went here to this charter school. I agree. I think education is a core city service. I think it is one that needs to be fully funded. I think teachers need to be able to afford to live in the city that they serve. I think that whether it's a traditional public school or a charter school, I think there's room for both. And I think that Asheville could do a little bit more to support its schools. Thank you very much.
This question has me remembering some things about past work I've done to support charter schools, particularly this one. And because I was a treasurer for the finance committee for this particular school for a long time. And there are things at a state level that are not great for charter schools, I'll say. And if we choose to fund Peak Academy, a charter school local here, which I believe we will, we have support, it will be the first time that City Council has invested in a charter school or a school directly like that. And I think that is monumentous. I think it begs the question, where will we go from here? Because what I recall from the funding trials of this particular charter school was the first 20-day rule. The education-based interest around that. We didn't, at the time I was making postcards and handing them out in the carpool line saying, if your kid doesn't show up for the first 20 days, we don't get the funding for them. Please make them show up even if they're sick. And we did other things like the lottery that you hear so much about. Those funds go to public schools. They don't go to charter schools. And that's a problem. There are things at a state level that we have to fix. And we'll do what we can on council in the meantime, but it's a much broader issue.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're generally in an agreement here that we all recognize that charter schools play an important part in our communities to make sure that children are getting access to the education they need to be able to grow up, to be able to work in this economy, be able to live in this country. And as Kevin had called out, they are a reflection of our community. So that's why I tend to believe that it's nice that we have so many distinct charter schools that focus on different aspects that give people the sort of education opportunities that they need between Evergreen, FD&SC, Rainbow Mountain, everybody. I think that this is a fantastic one. I think that, actually, I just realized I've not been by Rainbow Mountain in a while, so I hope they're still there. Yes, that's something that I remember we always would coordinate with them doing trips. Anyway, sorry about that. But anyways, point is that as has been called out by Kim, we need to make sure that we are funding our schools, make sure that teachers are able to get a living wage, as Todd said, so they can actually live in the communities where they work, calling back to what Kim was saying about multimodal streets, so that way cars are not a requirement for people to be able to live, work, and thrive in our communities. Thank you.
This is a question from an audience member. We'll begin on with Kim on this one. My family moved here 12 years ago, and it seems there's a quite bit more funding coming into the city. Why do you think the city has not been able to maintain city assets like Malvern Pool or Thomas Wolfe Auditorium, and what would you do to maintain and improve community spaces?
Oh, thank you so much for this question. I was hoping somebody would ask that. We have the most resources our community has ever known. And yet we're struggling so far behind all of our maintenance agreements and taking care of the people who live and work here and our natural environment. And I see the extractive nature of our over-reliance and unchecked tourism industry. And I've reached the limit. There's very little things that City Council can do. So what have I done? During my first governance committee meeting in 2021, I brought a recommendation to our legislative agenda asking that instead of us pretty please asking for 30% of our $41 million in hotel occupancy taxes, we should ask for what we need. We should ask for at least 50, but now we're even farther behind. If we can't get the hotel occupancy taxes flowing into this community to make it a great place to live and work, it will not be a great place to visit. I need community support. Bring the heat. I can handle the heat. That's why I'm in the kitchen. Keep bringing that heat.
Yes, I really love how you said that, Kim, because we really need you guys to reach out to us. We need to hear what you're saying. We need those emails. I've gotten emails from you. I've gotten texts. I've gotten phone calls. I've met with some of you guys for coffee. We need to hear what your views are. That's how we can be the best representative for you. And part of my campaign pillars is, number one, addressing our infrastructure needs and fortifying those things. That means starting with our community spaces, Malvern Hills Pool, the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium, our sidewalks, an integrated city where we can gather, where we can meet, where we can, dance and listen to music and have art is an integrated, healthy Asheville, and we must prioritize our common spaces. Even further, our greenways, our parks, making sure our parks are clean, making sure there's trash cans in our parks, making sure that we have a community art space that maybe isn't Thomas Wolfe, that we can have community events and shows. This this is all things that I commit to as your council member on Asheville City Council. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Okay, infrastructure. I think if we build it, we have to maintain it. I think with a little bit of fiscal responsibility, anything new, anything exciting, anything shiny, City Council needs to look and say, is this going to be at the expense of core city services? Infrastructure is absolute top. So I think we need to spend more on infrastructure. Thank you.
Agreed. This is actually something I campaigned on 4 years ago. We are just behind. It's a lack of a plan. It's a lack of a plan that stems from decades of deferred maintenance and the history that we have all inherited of not taking on a traditional way of managing the city. In other large cities around us, even smaller cities, they have bond cycles. They're constantly doing this improvement work. We've had 2 in the last 60 decades. It's not something we've done well. It's something we have to get on board with. You're going to hear more about it as the year progresses from council, from candidates. It's coming. But the reality is, I mean, I think Todd said it well. We should not be doing more big, shiny things when the things we currently have are falling apart. I am very disappointed to hear about the Malvern Hill pool. I was very disappointed about just several things that have not come to fruition, even your sidewalk that's a year behind or 6 years behind. It's time. And I think that's what we're seeing on council right now. We are drafting a big plan. It has taken a long time. We've had to hire firms to help us figure it out. There's a monumental challenge in front of us. But without a plan, we're never even going to start ticking away at it.
So this is a situation that's very near and dear to me. My 3 pillars are infrastructure, people, accountability, and infrastructure such as the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium, the Malvern Hills Pool, where I spent over 20 summers, making sure that our garages are accessible so the folks who do have to rely on a car still have a place to park. These things have been neglected for entirely too long. For me, I think that we could look at small things and find a way to fund these programs. So for example, the fees and charges manual is woefully out of date and is actually a regressive tax against the poorest people who live and work in town. We have a really great system for our garages that works for day-to-day on the week. First hour free, $2 an hour after that. For the garages that are right beside the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium and the Civic Center, we run special events. I was in charge of running these events. When we charge that increased flat fee for all-day parking, $2 of that fee is supposed to go to pay for the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. At some point, this became an insufficient fund and no longer reflects what they need. We could actually change that number to reflect the prices of the garages that are nearby, such as the Civic Center itself. At the Harris Cherokee Center, they can charge as much as $25 or $50 for parking, and they take all of this public resource and they give it away to these private businesses. I want to make sure that they pay their fair share, so we're not having to run a bond referendum to pay for fundamental maintenance that belongs to the people.
We do not have a mature bond program in Asheville that we're able to support our infrastructure, nor do we have business plans in place for the things that we can have business plans. We should not be having to use city budget money to repair the parking decks. The parking decks charge money. However, we went through a time a couple of years ago that the technology wasn't working. We didn't pay any attention to it. In almost a year, we didn't charge at the parking decks. The parking decks generate revenue. The other thing is, why do we only have parking meters in certain neighborhoods and not others? Even just in downtown. Why don't we charge on Sundays? All the parking spaces are full. That gives us resources to then fix things like Malvern Hills Pool that won't ever generate enough money to be able to pay for itself. But the things we can, like parking, like the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium, let's go this in the right path with a business plan to be able to succeed.
Now we have a second question from the audience, and then we'll start with Bo. Should Asheville have district elections for city council?
I don't think so. I think that we should remain at large. I think the whole city, you know, these decisions that Asheville City Council make don't just affect one district. They affect the whole city and, quite frankly, the county and sometimes even the surrounding areas. So I think everyone should have a choice in their elected representatives, and keeping it at large would maintain that. Thank you.
Wow, that is a great question. I've not heard that raised in a while. Absolutely. Yes, I'm 100% in favor of districting the city council like the county is. I think the best way that folks can make sure that if they live in South Asheville, they have a voice. Folks in East Asheville have a voice. Folks in Central Asheville have a voice. Districted city council, yes, 100%. Great. Whoever came up with that question, awesome question. Thank you.
You know, I'm still undecided on this. I think there are pros and cons. There are some benefits to having an at-large council. Frankly, in my history, I've lived here 25 years. We used to have 25 candidates at a time. We have 8. We have 6 here tonight. There are not a lot of people that are willing to step up and do this job, and I will tell you firsthand, it is not easy work, so I understand why. There is also a problem with some neighborhoods, like I hear from South Asheville all the time. We don't have representation, and that might be their only way to get it. But I really do remain undecided. I would have to see it flushed out in the community and get more community input. I see benefit and con on each side, unfortunately. Sorry, I don't have a better answer.
I tend to believe that representative democracy works best when the people feel that they have a representative that reflects their desires, their needs, and their wants from their government. So to that end, I do believe that we should have it. I think that it would need to be carefully placed so it doesn't become a gerrymandering kerfluffle every few years. I think that it should reflect people who live in communities, though, so that way the folks of Haw Creek don't feel like they don't have an adequate voice to be heard on the council, where you feel like you have to make a huge petition. You should be able to go to one person and say, this person can help us to carry it. I still think that it's good that people go out, make their voice heard. I think that is a key part and a beautiful part of our democracy. However, it would be nice if there was also an easier step. So it wouldn't take a giant organization to make every little issue heard. You should have one person you can go to. Thank you.
I haven't listened well enough to the community to be able to say the right direction there. I hear all the arguments whether or not we district or not. Fundamentally, if we're on council, it is our responsibility to listen to the entire city and not just the neighborhood we live in. You know, we could have divided up into districts and say there's an east. Well, what happens if the representative's from Chuns Cove and not from Haw Creek? Does that mean Haw Creek's out of the picture for the time? Absolutely, it shouldn't be. I think right now, having at large, the impetus is on us. It's not for you to, again, have to keep knocking on the door. It's for us to step up and listen and be present in each of the communities to hear what you need so that we can do that work.
That's a good point. You know, after 24 years of voter advocacy and engagement, I've done community radio for 20 years and produced the News Hour on Asheville FM. I recognize that some North Carolina cities have had better equitable outcomes and representation through districting. I've also looked at Asheville and Buncombe County's recent history, and representation matters. I'm Asheville's first openly queer member of council. I've served on the first and second all-female council in North Carolina and in our city. I have the great privilege of serving with 3 black women born and raised in our community. And there is one question that surfaced recently about, like, what is council missing? And I thought about the recent decision I pushed really hard to get a renter on our Planning and Zoning Commission. We don't currently have someone on council who relies deeply on affordable housing. So what I can promise you is that I will serve my whole city and all of my neighbors, even if you district the elections, just like I did during the water outage when I was helping people flush toilets for 10 days.
For our final question, we will begin with Todd. In Buncombe County, an average of 3 people die from drug overdose per week. Is your approach to local drug use through a carceral harm or reductionist lens? If it is carceral, how are charges or jail time supporting people who use drugs? If it is through a harm reductionist lens, please mention what resources you would want to see more of for drug users.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this hits home. My twin sister was killed on the streets in Asheville in 2010. She had a severe addiction to drugs, and it led to her demise. I helped set up the Veterans Treatment Court in Buncombe County in around 2014 and 2015 because I really believe in restorative justice, and I really believe in a pipeline not straight to the penitentiary, but that people should get second chances. And seeing what it's like when you don't get a second chance and having it end absolutely terribly, and then being able to work with veterans through ABCCM and through the Veterans Treatment Court, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and seeing people turn around their lives, I think it's inspirational. And I know when I got back from combat in 2003, when I look at the vets who I worked with in the Veterans Treatment Court, but by the grace of God, that would have been me. But it was lucky. The only reason why I was on this end of the bench and not that end of the bench is absolute sheer luck. Thank you. Thank you for the tough question.
I think the answer is somewhere in the middle and a little bit of both. We know that harm reduction saves lives, period. It's been studied. We know it. We're also seeing a larger issue, not just here in Asheville, in the state, in the nation. There is a change. There's a change in the drugs. There's a change in the behaviors. There's a change in the outcomes. They're more deadly. They're more dangerous. And I think sometimes that needs interrupted. I think that there are issues in our community that are going to take a bigger process. I support a larger clinical facility type organization that has low barriers of entry, but qualified, systematic opportunities to get people back on their feet in an efficient way, in a controlled manner. I'm not a fan of allowing rabid drug use throughout our city without resources. We've been trying to fix this by not sending officers to people who are experiencing crises, instead sending community responders there are social workers themselves who can introduce them to programs and try and get them that help. But I think the answer is really both. We're going to need both.
This is also something that I have a bit of a personal experience with. My mom's oldest brother, I also had issues with drugs, and he ended up dying from a disease that he contracted while using drugs in the streets of Asheville. I also, when in my time working for the city, I had to deal with folks who were sometimes not in their right mind. I was assaulted on 3 separate occasions, twice leading to situations where I had to call the police. It led to an arrest. However, I think that I don't bear any enmity to those folks. It's just a symptom of a larger problem. I think that we do need to take a look at what other cities are doing, look at how we can reach out to community organizations like ABCCM, look out to the people in the community who are able to help, connect them to the people who need that help, and just be very pragmatic, very compassionate, very results-driven. Make sure that we're getting folks the help they need to help to end the crisis. Thank you.
I think that it is the mix of incarceration is about stopping folks who are distributing the drugs and are distributing drugs that have got so many other substances in them that they're going beyond the drug, right? The other is that for the folks who their lives are getting taken away by that, we need to be giving them a helping hand. Stacking everybody in jail up is not going to be the solution that does that. And there's lots of different approaches. As we've gone through the question, one of the things that strikes me, one of our populations of neighbors who are deeply affected by this are unhoused. And the challenge right now is if they're looking for shelter, we don't have a place for them to go. And we need to be able to have a place for them to go as well. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to help them break this cycle and get the help and the treatment that they need.
So This one's a really personal one for me because when I was 14, I became the primary caretaker of my siblings when my mom got in an accident that led to her opioid use. So I want to say that everyone in Asheville deserves to be safe. Having a narrow lens of what public safety and health and well-being looks like limits our responses and can create new problems. Plus, it's really expensive. So if we want to be able to heal people, to house people, to provide services like recovery for folks who have lacked access to health care, then it's a choice of priorities. The city can and should partner with Buncombe County for a 24/7 community responder program. We need a HEART program like Durham has. They're getting great outcomes. We need to organize with community health workers to prevent gun violence and intimate partner violence. What can you do? I wrote an op-ed in the Citizen Times. It lays out a plan. Join me.
Yes, so this is my job every day, starting my career at the VA, working with veterans coming back from the war, working on the psychiatric unit, contracting with many treatment programs here in Asheville with men struggling with addiction, and having my own private practice where I focus on men, personality disorders, and addiction. This is my world. One, we must increase the stock of treatment options across the spectrum, from our transitional shelters that are met with case managers and social workers that can help them with an ID, moving to those next steps, to sober living homes, to residential treatment centers, to IOPs, intensive outpatients, to outpatient centers, to methadone and Suboxone funded treatments. And also one of the things I've had the honor of doing is training law enforcement officers for the past 10 years in crisis intervention training. I teach them how to deal with people with severe mental illness, psychosis, suicidality, walking them off the bridge, and addiction. And we must support our first responders in this fight as well. As far as incarceration, we must work with state and federal partners to make sure that the drugs that are coming into our community are stopped. And so this can be a multi-pronged, multifactorial approach. Thank you so much.
We're going to have one last question, and we'll begin with Sage. Climate change is affecting our generation, and scientists say it will only get worse if we don't act quickly. How do you plan on making Asheville a more environmentally conscious city?
Great question. Mic check. There it is. Great question, and not surprising coming from Evergreen, because I know this is an environmentalist-based school. I consider myself an environmentalist, and I think that we are not doing enough to advance climate-changing policy in our community. We try little things, right, like banning plastic bags. We get a lot of feedback, and it gets stalled. We try different things like more buses and expanded transit systems, and they get too expensive. We are not doing well. So what I have defaulted to is working on housing policy, because the core of our climate crisis comes from the simple and mere movement of people and goods. How we move and interact in our community is part of the crisis. And so I am trying to focus housing policy and transportation policy, so at least we can start to place and focus the growth that we know is coming along key corridors that are already transportation ready, so we can at least slow down the moving, slow down the expansion. As I said earlier, the bigger this city grows and the wider it goes, the more we will have to maintain and the farther we will have to drive back and forth.
On this issue, I feel that we should take steps that we can, pragmatic steps, to try and reduce the effect that we have on our environment. I thought that the plastic bag ban was a good idea. I, obviously struggled with not having a plastic straw like everybody else, but eventually I learned to deal with it, learned to make another solution. However, I think for the City Council, our most important step is going to be try to help our communities be more resilient for the changes that are already happening and will continue to happen. We need to be keeping an eye towards making sure our communities are flood safe, landslide, mudslide safe, make sure that we're able to help folks in the cases of extreme heat and extreme cold. And as we go forward, more and more are coming to use our water resources, and we need to make sure that we're able to handle those folks and provide them the water they need as droughts become more common, as our aquifers become more strained, and as things like COVID showed us, we also need to have a mindset towards supply chain shortages that will come as part of that climate change will also affect our businesses and hurt our community in other ways. Making sure that we're strong, resilient, and forward-thinking is the key. Thank you.
Our city actually has some really strong environmental policy. Previous city councils have done great work about setting goals within the city and within our communities. In fact, I see some members of the Environmental Commission that had served in the previous years. The trouble is we keep moving it down the priority list. Fundamentally, our environmental issues aren't like affordable housing or homelessness and separate. It's a fundamental basis for all of this work. We can't get to climate change when it's convenient. All of those decisions, whether it's housing or transit or anything, we have to have that environmental lens, and we've got to move our goals back up the priority list and also work with our city staff to make sure we are keeping a check on each other and making sure that we're meeting our goals as have long been established.
You're going to hear a lot about what we can't do, but are we doing what we can? When the city passed a climate emergency, I worked with youth in the Sunrise Movement to help bring forward one with a lens on equity, racial and class equity. So what can we do? Responding to our climate emergency looks like supporting our adopted neighborhood plans and our climate justice initiative with solutions brought forward by Black, Brown, and Indigenous people, keeping utility costs in check by incentivizing renewable energy options and ensuring fair residential water rates, because keeping the water on is a public health issue. It's also a climate justice issue. Investing in neighborhood resiliency hubs and food system security, including community gardens and the tailgate, like you have here, the tailgate market. Following through with our commitment to reparations and maintaining and restoring our tree canopy. Our tree canopy is our greatest asset to addressing the heat island effect and flood issues and stormwater mitigation, and it helps to keep utility costs low, and we need to do it together. Let's share the work.
City Council members play a crucial role in addressing climate change, and Asheville can be a leader that promotes sustainability to reduce carbon emissions and move our generations in a sustainable manner forward. We have the potential to foster economic growth, and here are some specific plans I would support. Making sure that we offer tax incentives to residents and businesses who retrofit their buildings to make them more green. Greening our city infrastructure moving forward, making sure that we have solar panels and energy efficient and environmentally friendly building materials. Making sure that we have a climate community support program for extreme heat and extreme cold. Making sure that people have ACs in their homes. Making sure that we have cooling stations downtown for our houseless community. Making sure that we have heat, we have ice distributed. Making sure that we expand our composting programs in the city. Making sure that all of that food waste does not end up in our landfill, creating carbon emissions and creating the need for another landfill, and making sure that we digitize city operations, moving away from paper and moving more towards digital. These are the things that I will work towards and commit as your Asheville City Council member. Thank you.
I think CJ here knocked it out of the park. I think resiliency is key. If money was no object, we could be the most environmental friendly city in the world. Money is an object. As we know, very forward thinking. Asheville bought all those electric buses and it didn't work out too well for us. So I think if we do small steps, small realistic steps, focused on resiliency instead of repair, and I think that's how we get forward.
And now each candidate will have 1 minute for their closing remarks. We will begin with CJ.
All right, so I just want to say thank you all so much for coming here. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to all of you. As you've kind of heard here, we're generally in a lot of agreement. However, I am perhaps the most obsessive person about trying to find small details. And so to that end, I want to call upon all of you, please, if there's something that you have as a pet peeve for you in your community, in your life, something else that you want to hear about, please let me know, because some of these things, like the Haw Creek initiative, I didn't know about until a few months ago when somebody had reached out and sent me a letter about it. So please, as much as possible, let us know about things like that. If you choose to put me as your city council member and elect me to the office, sorry, I'm a little thrown off just because I was thinking, oh, okay, I've got a moment. Anyways, first time doing politics. Sorry, I'll try to be better. Anyways, but if you choose me, I promise to be your voice on the city council. I promise to be pragmatic. I promise to be open, accountable. I promise to make sure that I hear what you need, and we will work to get you everything that you deserve. Thank you so much.
I was really fortunate to grow up in a household where everybody had worth. I never heard a negative word said against anybody for the color of their skin, for their gender, for their sexuality, for their religion, for their economic situation. I was always taught to love my neighbors. I think that's at the core of what we have to do. This is about taking us all on this trip. We've got to move with intentionality, or we're going to leave neighbors behind, and we can't do that. We've got to take care of each other, because if we don't do that, then who's going to? We are stewards of a great city that can be a far greater city in the years ahead, and we'll do that by taking care of each other and watching each other's backs and making sure we're all moving down the path of success together. I am thrilled to be running for Asheville City Council and appreciate your time with us this evening.
Thank you so much for having us. I love our city. I know that we're having hard conversations in City Hall because our community is facing serious issues. And I'm willing to share the work with you as I have continued to do. You can find out more information of what that's looked like at kimroneyforasheville.com. I'm committed to continuing the work for affordability, for climate and neighborhood resiliency, and for a public safety response that matches the crises at hand with the right person with the right tools and training when it comes to the opioid crisis, mental health, intimate partner violence, and homelessness. I know that community cares. I know that Haw Creek cares. And I know that we can do better together. More information at kimroneyforasheville.com. And don't forget, early voting is now through March 2nd for the March 5th primary.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Evergreen community. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you all. You guys were awesome. I hope this inspires you guys to run for office or work for a campaign. It truly is amazing and gratifying work. It's hard. People aren't always nice to you, but it is worth it. And this is what democracy looks like, when we all gather, when we all talk about the issues, and when we all can meet in face-to-face. As the only candidate up here with expertise in the issues that Asheville needs to face in the few years: crime, poverty, affordability, mental health, addiction, our houselessness issue. I invite you to join our campaign. Look me up. I have a proven track record of making the people's lives of Asheville better, and that's exactly what I intend to do. We can create the Asheville we all deserve and rekindle the spirit and get back to our roots. Together, we can make a thriving Asheville. Thank you so much for listening to us. I'd love your support. You get 3 choices for Asheville City Council. Make sure Bo Hess is one of those. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the wonderful questions. Thank you for not asking about Mars or space travel. Thank you all for coming out here tonight. I think it's important to realize that all of us only have one vote. But it's coming together, being able to work with each other and being able to work with the community. That's how we make the change that we need to make. I absolutely do not have all the answers. I don't. But I'm a really good listener, and I promise if elected to City Council, I will listen and do my best to represent you all. Thank you.
I think I'm the last one, so I'll round us out. I really want to say an extra thank you to Evergreen for hosting this and for y'all staying out so late. I know it's almost my bedtime too. And the students, you did a great job. I'm so impressed. You really did. You really did. And it reminds me that Evergreen and my son's education here is probably some of the very first glimpses at why I ended up doing this work too. I became a volunteer on boards in our community. I think I've served on 25 different boards. And it was a baby step each time to a role like this. And I love working in this community. I love the work of city planning. And I love it because I feel like Asheville is very active. We are a small city, but we have big city dreams. And sometimes we have big city problems. But I can always count on this community to show up, just like you did tonight, and talk to us about the problems and work together. One of the key lessons I've learned on council is that it takes a team. We have 3 seats. We have an open seat for sure because we have an incumbent that didn't run. So please get to know all these candidates. We need to be working together for this city to really become a flourishing city for everyone. I'm Sage Turner. It's sageforasheville.com. Feel free to reach out.
Thank you for participating tonight. Candidates, we appreciate your eagerness and commitment to answer questions honestly and informatively. Community, thank you for your thoughtful questions and your willingness to attend here in person or virtually. We appreciate everyone here tonight to participate in our local government. A couple of quick logistics notes. If you could please fold up your chair and take it over to our volunteers, who I believe are going to be over there. That would be greatly appreciated. Also, candidates and Evergreen volunteers, please come up to the stage for a photo before you leave. Be careful walking down the trail to your cars, flashlights recommended, and have a wonderful night.